In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to cite a scholarly journal article according to the guidelines in the SBL Handbook of Style. Journal articles are fairly easy to cite. They don't have nearly as much information to collect as you might find in other kinds of sources. And so once you know the right way to put that information together, they can be quick and easy to cite. So we're going to have two examples that we will work with for this tutorial today. The first is this article by Cite, and then I have another one by Troy Martin. Of course, to begin with, we need to look at our paradigm in the SBL Handbook of Style to see what it would look like. So I'm going to look in chapter 6. That's the place where we can find the paradigms to follow. And if I scroll through the table of contents, I can find exactly where the journal articles are going to be, or where the examples of how to cite a journal article are going to be. And it's going to be in 6.3.1. And so then if I turn the page to 6.3.1, then I find the examples of what it would look like for me to cite a specific journal article. And so as usual, the first one shows me what a full footnote would look like. The second example here shows me what a short footnote would look like. And then the last example, which happens to be on the next page, shows me what a bibliography entry should look like. So we're going to work through with all of those examples with the particular articles that we're looking at today. And we're going to start with the article from Cite. And if you'll notice, if I'm going to enter a bibliography entry, I need to have the author's name. Then I have the title of the journal article in quotation marks. Then I have the title of the journal, italicized and abbreviated, followed by the volume number, the year of publication, and then the inclusive page numbers. That is the total pages, the beginning, first page, and last page for that particular article. So that's all the information that I will need if I'm going to cite the bibliography. So let's go over to my example and see what we can find. With journal articles, most of the information that you need is right there on the page. Especially the first page, you'll find, of course, the author's name, you'll find the title, and then normally at the top of a page in a journal, you'll also find the page numbers and the information for the journal that it's found in, along with the volume number and year and that kind of information. So with journal articles, it's normally right there as you're looking at the particular article. So let's type out my information, beginning with the author's name and the title of the article. So now I have the author's name and the title of the article written out. You can notice that I have my indents correct for a bibliography entry. That is, I have the first line indented all the way to the left margin and every subsequent line indented 1/2 inch in from there. And so I've got that in there now. The next piece of information I'm going to need is the name of the journal. And so if I scroll around, I can normally find that somewhere. You can see it here at the top of the page. The journal that this particular article appears in is the Journal for the Study of the New Testament. Now, as I said, you need to have the title of the journal italicized, but also appropriately abbreviated. And so I'm going to look in the chapter 8 of the SBL Handbook to see how I should abbreviate this journal if they offer one. All this information is going to be found here in section 8.4, where it offers lists of alphabetized sources, secondary sources. That includes journals and reference works and series. So I can scroll here and look through either by source or by abbreviation. In this case, I probably would start by source and look for where we have journal of the study of the New Testament. But I also can, because this is an electronic document, make a quick search and see if I can find that somewhere in the list of abbreviations. All right, you can see I was able to find this here. The Journal for the Study of the New Testament should be abbreviated as JSNT. So I'm going to add that here, again, italicized. Now, the next piece of information I need, unitalicized, will be the volume number. So let me go back over to my source and see if I can find that. Again, it's right here at the top of the page. This number that comes before the date is the volume number. It's giving both the volume number and then after the period, the issue number. If there's a tricky part about journals, it may be this one. Do I include the issue number or not? There's actually a rule about this in the handbook. So if you go back and look at the entry for 6.3.1 and read this sentence here after our examples, it says that it is unnecessary to include the issue number unless the journal volume is not paginated consecutively. Now, that may be kind of a confusing sentence. What they're telling you is that in some journals, for every volume, they start the page at page number 1 and issue number 1, and then throughout all of the issues for that particular volume, they just keep counting up. So in issue 2, they don't start over with page 1. They just keep counting from wherever they left off in issue 1. So they're just going to number. They're going to number things consecutively throughout the entire volume, and then they'll start over in the next volume with page 1. Other journals will start over and start with page number 1 for each issue. So if they're starting over in each issue with page number 1, you do need to include the issue number. If they're numbering them consecutively, you do not need to include the issue number. That's what they're explaining there. Now that might be hard for you to know unless you're looking at multiple volumes or multiple issues rather from a particular volume, but there's a pretty good clue. We're on page number 372 in issue number 4. It'd be highly unlikely that one issue of a journal would have that many pages. And so I can with great confidence say that the Journal for the Study of New Testaments counts page numbers consecutively across the different issues. And so I don't need to include the issue number. If I did need to include an issue number, then I would add it after a period, just like you see it there. But in this case, I don't need to include that. The next piece of information is the year, and I've got that as well at the top of the page. This is from 2009. And then the last bit of information I need for a bibliography entry are the inclusive page numbers. So I need to find what's the first page this article appears on and what's the final page. So if I scroll up here, I'm looking at the first page. I notice that there's not a page number listed here, but thankfully the second page mentions that it starts on 372, so I know that this starts at 371. And I use my in dash there, and I go look for the last page of the article to see where it ends. And at the end of the bibliography, at the end of this article, we're on page 400. So I can include that as the final page of the article. And there's my entry for bibliography. Got the author's name, the title of the article, in parentheses. I've got the journal abbreviated and italicized, the volume number, the year, and the inclusive page numbers. If I'm going to use this in a footnote, then I'm going to use all of this information, most of this information, in the first full footnote, the first time I cite it. So I'm going to copy and paste that information down here and just edit it as needed. So again, if we go back and look at our paradigm, our example, we can see that I've got all the same information: author's name, the title in quotation marks, the journal title itself, italicized and abbreviated, volume number, year, and then in this case, after the colon, I would put the page number that my citation comes from, right, rather than trying to include the inclusive page numbers. So in this case, we'll flip this around. Again, you got to have the author's name first when you're working with footnotes. Then I've got the full title of the article. And then notice how I'm putting commas in between my elements rather than periods. That's true of footnotes. So I've got a comma after the author's name, a comma after the title of the article. I can leave my journal title the same, volume number the same, year the same. The only thing I would change here is that I would cite whatever specific page that this comes from. So let's say I'm citing something from page 375, then that's what I include there. If I'm going to cite this article another time, and I need the short note, then all I need is the author's last name, a shortened version of the title, something that will clue my reader into which particular source I'm looking at. Something like Nursling's probably would work fine here. And then I just need the page number. And that is all I need for my short footnote. And so that's how you cite a journal article. Let's go through this one more time, looking at a second example, this time an example from Troy Martin. So here we have an article called The Present Indicative in the Eschatological Statements of 1 Peter 1, 6, and 8 by Troy Martin. You'll notice, however, that the author's name does not appear right here on the first page. This particular journal does things a little bit differently than the Journal for the Study of the New Testament. So how do I know who this article is by? If their name is not right here on the first page of the article, there's two places I could look. I could go and find a hard copy of this journal and look at the table of contents, or sometimes it may be that they list the author's name at the last page, and that's the case here. At the end of the article, the author puts his or her name rather than at the beginning of the article. So let's start this by including the author's name, again, Troy Martin, and the name of the title of the article. So I've got the author's name and the full title of the journal article in my bibliography entry. One thing I might note here, you'll notice I'm trying to follow the grammar of the title as much as possible, but I am changing the capitalization. The title in the journal is listed in all caps. You do not do that in your bibliography entry, so go ahead and use proper capitalization for titles in your bibliography entry. So now that I've got the author's name as it appears in the article and the title as it appears, I need to find the journal that this appears in. This is in the Journal of Biblical Literature, and I want to double check, is there an abbreviation for the Journal of Biblical Literature? So I'm back here in Chapter 8 of the SBL Handbook, and I'm searching through the sources as they're alphabetized by source. So I'm in Journal of. Need to find Journal of Biblical Literature. There it is. All right, this particular place right here, Journal of Biblical Literature, JBL. So I'm going to add that, italicized and abbreviated. Then I need to figure out which volume number this is coming from. And you notice it doesn't appear at the top of each page, but it does appear on the very first page. JBL volume 111, and that's issue 2 is what the number after the slash means. So then if I might include the issue number, I need to decide, is this something where the pages are numbered consecutively across issues? And the fact that I'm on page 308 probably indicates that yes, it is. I don't need to worry about including an issue number. Again, if I did, I would put period 2, right, to indicate this is the second issue of volume 111. Then I need the year, which is right here at the top as well, 1992, colon, and the inclusive page numbers. Hopefully, the JBL actually includes that on the very first page. I can see here the inclusive page numbers for this article are 307 right, to 314. Then I can put my period and end my citation there. So again, that's fairly easy to do. If I was going to cite this source, of course, I would copy and paste all this information and arrange it properly for a footnote. So let me show you what that would look like, just as another example. So you can see now I have my footnote there where I've got the author's name with first name first, comma rather than a period, the article in quotation marks with a comma at the end. Do notice how I'm keeping those commas inside of the quotation marks. That's what it should look like there. Then I've got the title of the journal, abbreviated and italicized, journal number, or volume number rather, year, and the page number that my citation comes from. And so there's another example of what that should look like. Now, one thing you might look for if you have downloaded sources electronically is a front page that includes most of the information you need. So, if we're looking here at the front page of this particular article, when I downloaded it, it gave me this information where I've got the name of the article, the author's name, the source, that is the journal it came from, the volume that it came from, the time when it was published, as well as the page numbers. The same is true here in the article. If I flip Cite, if I go back to the very first page from this download, it provided that information for me at the top. Not all downloads would do that, but it might be something you can look for. But even without that, as I've showed you, you can find all the information that you need to make proper citations on the article itself.